Our topic today, my topic for today for this weekly comics chat is Thunderbolts, more like Blunderbolts. Well, I'm going to do a review of the movie. I just saw the movie yesterday. I found out some people were surprised that it dropped already. But remember, if it has a Friday release date in the States, it's already dropped overseas first. They release stuff overseas first. Normally, the United States gets it last if it's a U.S. movie. And also, if it's a Friday drop, it's available on the Thursday before. People have been asking me what were my thoughts, what's my review, what do you think, blah, blah, blah. So that's what I'm here today to do, is to let folks know exactly what I thought, exactly how the movie played out, and just in terms of my opinion and all that, because everybody's got their own opinion or whatever. But anyway, so let's take it from the top. So the first thing I want to clear the air about is the fact that all of my predictions came true. Okay, knew who was going to die, knew how the main villain was going to be defeated, knew how all this was going to play out. I said all that on Twitter, so you can go back and look at my tweets before the movie actually dropped. Said all that before all it happened. So all of my predictions came true with this film. Okay? And next thing to clear the air is that this is not the Thunderbolts. Lord have mercy. Now, I wish my friend Steve Sellers was here. He's Shadewing on Twitter. Steve is a strong fan of the Thunderbolts from the comics. And Steve can tell you in detail how this is not the Thunderbolts. The Thunderbolts in the comics were a team of villains that were posing as heroes. They had the regular villain persona, but then they created a code name and a costume and a persona. They either took over for an existing hero or they created their own hero, and they were actually villains posing as heroes. And so the Thunderbolts in the comics have a very rich storyline, but that's not these folks. This is Marvel's attempt at a Suicide Squad, and we all knew that. But they're not the Thunderbolts, so it's a misnomer. Okay? Also, I'm still under air clearance. Yes, they do repurpose the Avengers Tower into the Watchtower into this movie. Yes, they do. Oh, by the way, I didn't say. Full spoilers in my review. Full spoilers, because I don't believe in reviewing a movie without spoilers. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I never do a spoiler-free and no. If I'm going to talk about the movie, I'm going to talk about the movie. So there are full spoilers in this review, just so you know. So if you haven't seen it yet, then wait till you go see it to watch this video, because I'm spoiling. Okay, so they do repurpose Avengers Tower into the Watchtower in this movie. Fontaine has the Avengers A on display. So also, she has Chitauri weapons and Chitauri cuffs on display as well. So they heavily reference the first Avengers movie and are heavily banking on it as a lot of what happens in this movie. So just wanted to clear the air with that stuff. Okay, now a few more things I'm still under air clears. A few more things. I've heard some people say it wasn't woke, and no, that's not true. You are so used to woke until it doesn't register anymore. If your house is funky and you never open a window or go outside, you get used to the smell. You don't know your house don't smell good till you go outside or open a window. And once you breathe some fresh air, when you come back in, you're like, "Whoa, Lord." Okay, you are so used to woke, it doesn't register anymore. Because yes, this movie was woke. Taskmaster was gender swap. Taskmaster in the comics is a man. Ghost was gender swap. Ghost in the comics is a man. Red Guardian is not Homer Simpson with superpowers. He's not Goofy. Okay? There's constant belittling of the men in this movie. So you're so used to that. You're so used to content being like that until it doesn't register for you anymore. But that doesn't mean that it's not woke. That just means you're so used to it, it doesn't register. You get it? Everybody was saying this was Florence Pugh's movie. This was Yelena Belova's movie. That's not true. It was not Yelena's movie. It's not that Florence's performance wasn't good, because that's not true. Her performance was very good, but this is not her movie. This was Fontaine's movie. Fontaine was driving the story on every level. They tried to make it seem like Yelena's story, but it really wasn't. How do I know that? Because if you cut Yelena out, the movie's still the same. If you cut Fontaine out, it is not. This is Fontaine's story. She's driving the plot and the action. The desire line of this movie is hers, not Yelena's. You could take Yelena out of this movie and it's the same movie. Okay? Also, on that note, I was just reminded of how much I can't stand Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I never liked her, don't like her now, and Fontaine is one of the most insufferable characters I've ever seen in my life. She is absolutely insufferable. Okay? Can't stand her. So, just putting that out there. Again, I'm under air clears. I'm just trying to clear the air. I want to say all that before I dive into the movie. Okay, so next up. Now, the themes of the film main themes are self-worth. Okay, the movie is literally and metaphorically, about battling darkness, battling depression, and finding meaning for your life. Okay, that's what Yelena keys in on in the first scene that opens the movie. It's that leap off the second tallest building in the world that Florence Pugh wanted to do. She had to fight the producers to let her do that, a la Tom Cruise style. Okay, so that's the basic theme of the movie. It's self-worth, self-purpose, battling darkness, battling depression to find meaning. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that per se, but a superhero movie is not a therapy session. A superhero movie is not a therapy session. So if it had been handled better, maybe, okay? Nothing wrong with therapy and deeper psychological themes, but this movie sacrificed characterization to keep hitting you over the head with identity and self-worth issues. Okay, Bob's entire character was pathetic and weak. He was a little boy with damaged self-esteem that was locked in his own mind. The Sentry or the Void character was basically his dark side come to light, granted by the experimental super soldier serum. Okay, so I don't know if they're trying to paint him as a villain or more of a victim or just an antagonist or quite where he was. Okay, but he was weak and broken the whole movie. They also mislead you in the trailer. It gives you the impression that Sentry is wiping people out, that he's turning them into shadows. His other name besides Sentry is the Void, that he's turning them into shadows. He's blotting them out, that the darkness is erasing them, and that's not really true. So if you don't know Sentry from the comics, then all you have to go on is what you see in the trailer and in the movie. Makes it look like it's Black Death unfolding over the city. But what really happens with that impact is that it transports you to a pocket dimension where you have to revisit and relive your most horrific memories and experiences. So it's not really actual death blotting you out. It's not really that. It gives the impression that it's that for sure. It's not really death. It's you're being trapped perpetually, walking through the different rooms of your life of your worst memories and experiences and feelings is what's happening. Okay? So next up, what I'm going to talk about. Okay, here's the actual plot of the movie. The basic plot of this film, again, this is Fontaine's movie. This is not Yelena's movie. Fontaine is trying to solidify herself in her position of power in Congress. She's kind of going for being Nick Fury and Thunderbolt Ross and an unseatable congressperson kind of all rolled into one. Her first thought is to eliminate all the evidence of her super soldier experiments, experimental formulas, and all the super soldiers that she's created, that she's had working for her, in terms of covert and black ops. She wants to wipe all that out. So she sends them to kill each other. And then she sets the facility on fire. Okay. In the middle of that operation, she changes her mind when she finds out that Bob survived. When she finds out that Bob survived the treatment, she then becomes curious as to what kind of powers he got as a result of surviving that treatment, and goes on seeing herself. But her original idea is, like I said, to become unseatable in Congress and be Nick Fury and Ross all rolled into one, and she wants to blot out all the evidence. Okay? In her own words, her overall goal is to become unimpeachable. The rest of the movie is basically her chasing the Thunderbolts to try to destroy them, and her using Bob as a personal demigod to try to control everything. But there are a few twists along the way before we get to the ending. So, Taskmaster dies in the first 15 minutes, to the point where I'm wondering how Olga Koryolenko, am I saying her name right? Olga Koryolenko even got a name credit. She only shows her face one time and she utters one line. And then she's shot in the head and that's it. And she's barely mentioned again. She died unceremoniously, like she never even existed. So they already did Taskmaster as a character wrong by gender swapping him, because he's really formidable in the comics. You never get that sense in the Black Widow movie, where we meet the female Taskmaster because she's a victim of the Black Widow training program of the same man that created the Red Room and all that. She's just a victim of that programming. His daughter, in fact. Okay? So you have never really met the real Taskmaster on screen. But here, she's dead in the first 15 minutes. She gets shot right in the head. Which leads me to the next thing, is that everybody's a super soldier, which kind of makes the action kind of pointless. They're literally a team of experiments with the super soldier formula. So it's funny watching them fight, because how could they get the upper hand on each other? I guess maybe with more training. But it's really, really kind of funny, because in the MCU, they keep trying to recreate Steve Rogers, Captain America, but they can't. And every time they try, they don't get the results that they wanted, because they never understood it was Steve Rogers' character. It was him as a person that made him become Captain America. You can't just give super soldier serum powers to anyone and think that's going to result in a hero or whatever it is that you want, or a soldier that you're trying to control. It was Steve Rogers as a person that makes a difference. That's what they don't get. Okay? So that's another reason Taskmaster dying the way she did is so awful, because she should have been able to block or avoid. She's faster than that, but just boom, and she's gone, and that's it. Okay, Walker, USA agent of the official Captain America for about 5 minutes. Yeah, he's an idiot. He's an unsympathetic idiot all the way through. The one time in the movie I thought it was going to take a real chance was when Yelena, so tired of her life, embraced what we thought was death and actually stepped into the void. If she had really died, that would have been the biggest plot twist of all time. That was the only time in the whole movie where I stood up and I was like, whoa, didn't see that coming. Because if they had killed Yelena 3/4 of the way in, that would have, wow, completely changed everything. So I thought they were going to take a chance to do that. That would have been really interesting if they had followed through with that. But they didn't. Because we find out through that experience that it was just a bunch of trips through your worst memories. Okay? So there's 2 more big things that happen, but I'm going to save those for the very end of this review. Okay? Next up, what we're going to talk about is one of the worst elements of this film. One of the worst elements of this film, and that is the humor. The humor is one of the worst things in this film. It's one of the biggest stinking issues with this movie. Literally every other line is a one-liner. Every conversation is a joke. I kid you not. I'm not even exaggerating. If you see it, you'll see what I mean. Every conversation is a quip. Every conversation is ended with a joke. It's just over and over and over again. Have you ever listened to an annoying comedian that is not nearly as clever or as funny as they think they are? That was this whole movie. The dialogue in this movie, they thought it was so clever and so funny, and none of it lands. Nobody in the theater was laughing. It's terrible. Okay. The name Thunderbolts comes from Yelena's junior high school soccer team. So I kid you not, that's why they're called the Thunderbolts, or that's where that name comes from. It's Yelena's junior high school soccer team's name. She mentions that to Red Guardian, and then he takes off with it, and now they're the Thunderbolts. That's where that comes from. The biggest offender for the bad humor was Red Guardian himself. He was completely obnoxious, and every time he opened his stupid mouth, I just want to tell him to shut up. Okay, he's like that guy that was dressed up in a Santa suit that's drunk at the office party, that thinks he's so funny, and he's just loud. Every time he talks, he's not talking, he's yelling, he's just loud. And it's obnoxious and annoying from beginning to end. He was a class A buffoon in an already buffoonish movie. Okay? And then there was Fontaine's assistant. She was like a combination of a millennial and a cliche from a Joss Whedon show. Even the way she talked, everything she said was a question. And every time she had a sentence, you can hear the question mark when she ends it. Got on my reserve nerve. Okay, it just was not funny. Okay, I know they thought it was funny, and I know they was trying to be funny with it, but it wasn't funny. It didn't land. Okay. Now, when they actually meet Century, when they actually meet Bob, he's in the facility, and they don't know why he's there. They didn't expect to find him there, and he's waking up with no memory. Now, if you know about Century from the comics, you know his big thing is always that he doesn't have a memory of who he was when he was Century, and other people's memory of him was blotted out because he was so powerful and so terrible and so destructive from the comics. But if you don't know that from the comics, in the movie, he just wakes up basically with amnesia as to who he is and how he got there. So they work together begrudgingly to get out of the facility before Fontaine has it lit on fire. And then they have to fight to get back to her, to take the fight back to her. They have to, bluff their way out of the scene. And then Bucky stops them on the way and tells them that he's recruiting them and they don't have any choice but to help them shut down Fontaine and all that, what she's doing or whatever. So by the time they get back to her, they fight their way through, and then she cuts in through the intercom and says, "What are you guys doing? I left the front door open for you. Come on up." So once again, undercutting the action in the scene with making it a joke. By the time they get up there, then Bob has turned into Century, and we see him in that full costume. His costume was actually the best costume in the movie for my money. It looked the most comic and accurate, but it looked the best, all things considered. But Fontaine's relationship with him was cringe. Everything about her interaction with Bob, to me, it was like a seasoned child abuser. And I know that's a strong statement to make, but that's the way it felt to me. Her lines were like, "I understand you. I believe in you. Nobody understands you but me. They all think you're a loser, but I'm the only one you can trust." That is classic abuser dialogue. That is classic child abuse and manipulation from someone that's a master of it. But also, it's not clear if Bob is autistic or if he has Asperger's or some other type of issue. There are clearly some developmental issues, but they don't really make a point of discovering what they are. We just kind of see Bob that way. And she just twists him and turns him with her manipulation. And for me, it was nothing but cringe. So after they meet Bob, Bob realizes in that same exchange, okay, after he crushes them in combat, because of course he does, we all knew that. We all knew there would be no match for Sentry. It was kind of a joke. He folds Walker's shield in half and he crunches it like a taco and he crushes Bucky's arm and overheats it. He tosses everybody else into walls, through walls, out the windows, because he has the force. And so it was fun watching Bob realize after he did all that, that since he has the power of a demigod, why should he have to listen to Fontaine? That was the funnest part for me when he realized when the worm turned on her very, very fast, like, if I can do all this, what in the world do I have to listen to you for? Okay. But it turns out that was actually more of a Hulk Banner thing or a Jekyll Hyde thing, where Bob, the person, was being suborned by what I'll call Darkside Bob, who is the Sentry. So it was a clear division of personality, clear at least two distinct personalities operating in that same frame. It would have been more interesting if it was actually Bob realizing those things, but it really wasn't. And so then he goes on his spree to prove himself and to also remember another name is for him is the Void, and he begins to spread his black death everywhere he touches, everywhere he goes. And what we see happen again in the frame is you see people turn into shadows. Now, I have a personal anecdote for that. Last time I was in Japan, I went to Hiroshima, and right in the middle of the city, they have a museum and a monument to what the city looked like before the bomb fell, before the A-bomb fell, and afterwards. And they've got origami tribute. There's 1,000 pieces of origami there. If you've never been there, it's quite beautiful. They have the eternal flame that will never go out as long as there are nuclear weapons in the world. And when you walk in the museum, it's filled with letters written by the people of Hiroshima to other people that use nuclear power, saying that we, the people of Hiroshima, have a unique perspective. We beseech you to not use nuclear weapons. It's really powerful. It was life-changing for me. Inside the museum, they show you what it was like. I kid you not, it looked like the Terminator. It looked like when Reese was thinking back to his life in the future after the nuclear war. It looked like that. And I'll never forget, there was this one display where a man had been flash fried by the nuclear bomb and his shadow got imprinted on the concrete. That is what the effect of Sentry's powers look like in the movie. Like the people are being voided or flash fried or turned into dust instantly. So after Bob is doing that to prove himself, to prove that he's worthy, to prove that he's powerful, to prove all the things that, he doesn't want to be true, then right in the midst of that, that's when Yelena decides that she doesn't want to live anymore. Okay? And that's when we find that it's not actually death. It's actually going into a void where you have to relive all of your memories. So then what happens after that is that the rest of the team follows her into the void and finds her, because of course they do. And then in eternal sunshine of the spotless mind fashion, they run through the different rooms, and they're all despair rooms until they find Bob's room, where Bob's real self is kind of hiding, because he said it's the only space that isn't really negative. And then we also find the lab where Bob was experimented on that we see in the beginning of the movie, and that's where Dark Bob actually lives. So then, of course, regular Bob attacks Dark Bob and starts beating the crap out of him. And of course, Yelena talks him down, just like we knew was going to happen. Everybody said that's what was going to happen, because they cannot possibly beat the Sentry. How? How? Even the power he displayed, that wasn't even all of his power. There's no way they were going to beat him, so we knew he had to be talked down. So Yelena seems to have a crush on Bob from the beginning. and they seem to kind of trauma bond. And then she's the one to kind of talk him down and help him, to realize to break away from that darkness and not let it consume him. And then they find their way back into the real world because, of course, they do. That reminded me a lot about Star Trek Generations and the Nexus, because there was so much buildup about the Nexus and how inescapable it was. And Kirk and Picard just rode out on horses. They just decided to leave and they left. So as terrible as his power was that Bob had on display, when the team decided that they want to get out of the void, they did. Now, of course, Bob was there helping them and everything, but still, it kind of takes away from the awfulness or the threat level if you can go through all that and just get back out, is what it felt like to me. Okay? And my thought was also, what was Bob going to do if he succeeded? Was he just going to consume the world? If he succeeded in voiding everybody in the city, what was next? Was he going to turn on Fontaine? Was he going to take over himself? Like, what was the thought after, if his plan had worked out and people were actually wiped out, what was going to happen after that? But anyway, so that's pretty much how they interact with Sentry. And I don't really feel like that Bob has an arc because we don't spend enough time with him to care. And see, that's one of the biggest flaws and weaknesses of this film, and that is that they introduce Bob, and he's such a key player, and he's so powerful. He's basically unbeatable except by being talked now. But we have no history with him. So we kind of meet him, and he becomes this unstoppable thing. And it felt a lot like Nuclear Man and Superman 4. I know that's a poor comparison, but it felt like that because we don't know him. We don't know him. We have a little bit of history with the other characters, Bucky being the character we have the most history with. But with Bob, we just meet him in this film, and there's not enough time spent for us to vibe with him. He's kind of a mystery at first, and then we find out what he is and find out all that. And the next thing we know, he's talked down by movie's end. And so there wasn't a connection, and Yelena gloms onto him so fast. Now, I understand they're trying to say that they had an affinity because she didn't find any purpose in her life either and all that different kind of stuff. And she told Fontaine she wanted some more high-profile work because she wanted to become a hero like Scarlett Johansson, like Natasha was. She was tired of dark ops. She was tired of covert ops. She was tired basically of being an assassin and wanted to do some more work for the light. Okay. But for Bob, that arc is just rushed. And for Yelena, she just, again, kind of becomes emotionally involved with him in some kind of way. Maybe it's a crushy way. Maybe it's an empathetic way. We're not sure. But how that gives her the leverage to talk him down by movie's end just felt hollow to me. It just didn't ring true. And that's really one of the core problems with this movie, is that with Bob, we don't spend enough time with him, but we don't care about these characters. We would care the most about Bucky, but it's not really Bucky's movie. He's in it and he's got scenes and all that, but it's not about his journey. It's not about his struggle. It's not about his internal conflicts. Those things are hinted at, but they're not really delved into. And like I said, the humor room is ruins just about everything. Bucky dries his cyborg arm in the dishwasher. I'm not even making that up. He dries his cyborg arm in the dishwasher. I'm like, don't you understand that undermines the pain it took to attach that arm and everything that comes along with this program and all that? And now it's just kind of a joke. So anyway, that's the bulk of the film. So then we get down to the finale, and we get down to the final twists and how everything ends up playing out. Okay? So once they find their way back from the Nexus, back from the void, back from the depression after they've all seen the worst day of their lives played out in front of them, but they see it from third person. So they see themselves in it, at whatever age they were when they went through it, but it's their self now watching that scene play out then. So after Bob helps them back, or they all get back from that after they've survived all that, and we find out that the void's power is not blotting people out, it's just putting them in that pocket dimension. Okay. The final twist of the movie is that when they all come back, they're going after Fontaine. She's standing there in the middle of the street. And Bucky does have a real good scene where cars are crashing and this one car is coming at a family and he puts his bionic left arm out and, pushes the car above him. That was really cool. And then they had another scene where a big concrete slab was falling and it took all the Thunderbolts to push it over and not crush the lady it was falling on. So very, very quickly, they tried to give them heroic moments, which was cool, but it was so heavy. It was so heavy-handed. You know what I mean? It wasn't them growing into being heroes. It wasn't them kind of growing into something. It was, look at us being heroic in this moment. Aren't we cool? Aren't we heroes now? Let's go be good people now, that kind of thing. But it was, again, heavy-handed. It wasn't organic. It was just, they might as well have put a neon sign on that film said, see, ain't they heroes now? I'm serious. That's what it looked like. So they come through all that and they see Fontaine and she's over on her radio or over on her phone or whatever she's doing. And okay, I'm going to get the comments at the end. Dave, I see your comment. I'm going to get the comments at the end. That's a very good comment though, so I want to address that. So they see Fontaine, and after Bob has been talked down, and then she runs away from them through a curtain, through a tent. And so they all chase after her. When she emerges on the other side of the tent, she walks into a press conference. She has all the press lined up. And when the heroes emerge, they're all there with blood in their eyes to get their revenge on her because she, from the beginning of the movie, she's been trying to kill them because they are the living evidence of her experiments with the super soldier serum and formula. And she wanted to blot all that out. And she's been, because first she tried to burn them out, then she was trying to, bob them out. But the whole movie, she's been trying to get rid of them so they couldn't incriminate her. So they couldn't wait to get out there and get their hands on her and tell the world what she really had been doing. Lo and behold, when she comes out from that tent, it's into a press conference. And the heroes come out and they're stunned because there's all kind of cameras and all kind of microphones and all kind of attention. And they realize they can't very well beat her to death on camera on national TV. And then you know what Fontaine does? She, once again, makes it all about her. Can't stand her. She makes it all about her because in the beginning, when she was starting her impeachment hearings, she said the Avengers aren't coming, so we need something new. At this press conference, she says it's because of her efforts that the world was saved, that everything that happened with Sentry and all that was because of her efforts and her putting this team together. And it was because of her machinations that the people were safe again. And then she turned around and said, and I'd like to introduce to you the new Avengers. Good gravy from the Navy. The team thought that was ridiculous too. The new Avengers, that was so ridiculous. And everybody was like, what? So it was a masterful twist in the sense of Fontaine just spinning everything, thinking on her feet, and stopping them from just putting her on blast and beating her to a pulp, and all of a sudden making them celebrities and heroes all in one fell swoop. That was good, but it was still kind of ridiculous that these people have been assassins all this time. And these people have all done very, very dirty things all this time. And in many cases, remember, that was one of the things in Winter Soldier that jumped out at me when Black Widow is describing Winter Soldier to Steve Rogers. She said he was a shadow, he was a legend, he was a ghost. No one knew if he was real or not. So by the time the movie's over, Bucky is just out there on the highway, all out in the open, fighting Nick Fury, fighting Steve and Natasha and all that. It's like you've been in covert ops all this time, and now all of a sudden you're just out there, but whatever. So that was this same thing, except on steroids. These covert assassins that have been doing the dirty work for Fontaine behind the scenes all this time, all of a sudden are national celebrities on TV. Everybody knows who they are. And they're announced as the new Avengers. And it seems like the people just accepted it. And I was like, it just felt really ridiculous. It was a cool twist in terms of her ruthlessness and thinking on her feet to turn the situation to her advantage, which was consistent with Fontaine's character through the movie. But what would you do if there was a press conference and somebody high up in government brought out a team of assassins and says, "This is the new Justice League right here, these folks"? But wouldn't there be a million questions? And since everybody knows who Bucky Barnes is, I know he was a senator, but everybody knows about his past. Wouldn't there be questions? Wouldn't there be some kind of pushback? Wouldn't there be, there would be some type of reaction other than cheering and, "Oh my God, this is awesome." It was just done so quickly until it was ridiculous. Okay. So Yelena walks up to Fontaine and whispers to her, because I thought she was going to say it in the mic. She whispers to Fontaine, "We own you now," which was true. So I thought that was a nice twist, because I thought Yelena was going to punch her. I thought she was going to knock the teeth out of her mouth, but she wasn't going to do that on camera. But she said, "We own you now," which is true. And Fontaine gets this twisted look because she realizes how true that is. But I still didn't take that these are the new Avengers seriously. Because what I thought was going to happen was that they were going to introduce the young Avengers. I thought that the conclusion of this movie was going to be them bringing out Wiccan, Kate Bishop, Cassie Lang, Patriot, America Chavez, Miss Marvel. I thought that, and Kamala Khan was going to be appointed the leader. I thought that's what was going to happen. I still think that's going to happen at some point, but I thought that was going to be the climax of this movie. Not that the Thunderbolts would be recrowned as the new Avengers, Lord have mercy. But anyway, as we go through the post-credit scenes, we come to find out it really is true, that they really were the new Avengers. And I'm still stunned by that. How quickly and easily the world would accept such a thing didn't make any sense to me. So the first post-credit scene, remember I told you this is a spoiler review because I don't talk about movies without spoilers. Okay? I see your comments, everybody. I see your comments in the chat. I'm going to get to those comments as soon as I finish. So first post-credit scene is Red Guardian in the grocery store flirting with some woman who's trying to buy cereal. And he says, "Do you like Wheaties box? Check out Wheaties box." And then he pulls down his glasses and he smiles like, "That is me on box. That is me on Wheaties box." And she's like, "Thanks." And she walks away. It was just so goofy. But they're celebrities now. They're the heroes now. They're just, I guess so. Okay. Then we come to the second post-credit scene, and this was the game changer. This was the game changer. Okay. This one is all the way at the end of all the credits of the movie. So the first post-credit scene is about, just 30 seconds in. You have to watch until the full credits roll to the very end of the movie to see this one. And I've been told it's the longest post-credit scene in MCU history. So flash forward to 14 months later, and they're discussing past battles, current strategies, and current problems. One of the problems that they're having is that Sam Wilson, of all people, is threatening to trademark the Avengers name and brand. I kid you not. That's just so bizarre to me. Sam Wilson, out of all people, and it's an issue now. And haven't they been, of the Avengers, you just told us, they've been the new Avengers for like 14 months now. And, and Red Guardian is out there hawking all the merch and all that. It just seems so disjointed. But anyway, so they're talking about that. And then the big finale. And what's so funny is they look so comfortable in these roles now. Bob is there and he's just kind of hanging out. And they're like asking him to use his powers, but he reminds them, I can't use my powers without the dark side of me coming out. So he's like the new Hulk, I guess. And Yelena looks different. She looks a little bit more polished, but it's like they just slid into these hero roles. Okay. So then there's a blip on the radar and we see a ship entering the atmosphere and it's coming from another dimension. It's not entering the atmosphere from further up. It's coming from another dimension from ours breaking through. And then the ship turns and we clearly see a 4 and it's the Fantastic Four. That's their entrance into the MCU universe, which completely spoils the ending of their movie because we know that means then on some level that they lose. Or it could be possible that they win, but Reed builds that multiverse bridge to come over here. And because at the end of their movie, maybe that Galactus says he's going to go conquer other worlds. So Reed, since he feels like it's his fault, because it's clear from the trailer that Reed feels like it's his fault for drawing Galactus's attention, that it was their original space flight that drew his attention. So maybe Reed's guilt is what's driving him to come over here and warn other realities that Galactus is coming. So maybe it's not necessarily that they lose in their dimension, but it could be. But however, we know that that's how their movie ends now, because that's how the Fantastic Four gets into the main MCU. They flee their universe. So either Galactus wins and makes a Danish pastry out of their original Earth, or they beat him, or they temporarily turn him back. But Reed now feels compelled to warn other universes of Galactus' coming. We'll see. I'm gonna get to comments after this. Okay, so in conclusion, like I said yesterday on Twitter, which Drew liked his firestorm because that's where he got like, I don't know, I think I got like 30,000 views on that one. All in all, this movie's awful. The humor is awful. Even the deeper themes that were explored, depression, self-worth, battling your darkness, getting over your past memories, they were done so in a what's that doing in a superhero movie kind of way, because the movie tried to have it both ways. So you can't be this deep psychological thriller and this deep kind of psychological dive into these kind of issues, but then you're this fun, superhero action fanfare at the same time. You can't really have both of those tones. And even another thing I noticed was that the lighting was kind of off. Now, maybe it was my theater. I don't know, maybe it was the screen I saw it on. I don't know, but the movie looked dark. It looked washed out. It wasn't fully Snyder washed out, but it had a dark gray bluish tinge. It had a palette. Maybe that was to suggest the darkness that, Bob was dealing with and all of them were dealing with or whatever. Maybe that was it. Because, like in the Matrix, when you're in the Matrix, it's green. When in the real world, it's blue-gray. Maybe that was it. I don't know. But the movie was darker than it needed to be. And several scenes was kind of hard to make out what was going on. So, but the reason that I know that this movie really doesn't matter is because you can take it out of the MCU and everything stays the same. The big movies that are coming are Fantastic Four, Doomsday, and Secret Wars. And other than the FF reveal at the end, if the Thunderbolts movie didn't exist, what would change? And the answer is nothing. Absolutely nothing. As an author, one of the first things you have to learn, because it really hurts your ego, really hurts your feelings as an author, when you write your chapters, if you have a chapter in your story that can be lifted all the way out the story, and the story doesn't change, that means your chapter is superfluous. That means it's unnecessary. And sometimes that's hard to face. So if you can pull your chapter out of the story and nothing happens, the story doesn't change, that means your chapter is unnecessary. That's this movie. If there were no Thunderbolts movie, if there were no Thunderbolts organization, if none of the events of this movie happen, nothing changes. Fantastic Four still happens. They still come here and Doomsday and Secret Wars are still the biggest films that people are looking forward to. So, I mean, kind of like, what was the point? What was the point? It just felt unnecessary. That's the Thunderbolts movie. You can just lift it right out of the MCU, and it doesn't really matter. Are they going to stick as new Avengers? Aren't they going to introduce the young Avengers? When the FF gets here, when we're in Doomsday Secret Wars, is their presence going to make that much of a difference? Is Bob going to be the one? Because everything I've read about Doomsday and Secret Wars is that the one that's going to save the day is Franklin Richards. Because, he's the overpowered child of Reed and Sue has him in the Fantastic Four movie. Because clearly at some points in that movie she's pregnant, very much so, and then another point she's not. So it seems like it's going to be Franklin that makes a difference. So you could lift the Thunderbolts movie right out of the MCU films and nothing changes. So that's why I said yesterday, it's awful. It's awful. None of what it is trying to do actually works. That's why it's so bad. It's trying to tackle really deep themes with really, really bad humor. It's trying to tackle existential crisis questions in a superhero context that's also laughing and jokey. It's just, now I've seen some other reviews, some other people talk about how this movie was about depression and it's a movie about crying your way through and all that. And it's really, really kind of bleak. It doesn't really have any up moments. Yelena even has a scene where she says that we're all losers. We're all worthless, which is true. They probably should have called it The Losers. That would have been more accurate. But now all of a sudden, these are the new Avengers. And they just go with it. And just, sorry. Sorry, I couldn't get with any of that. Okay, Dave Tiki says the Thunderbolts concept of villains posing as heroes is forever lost now. Lord have mercy, that's the truth. Okay, it was such a great concept from the comics, and it was such a powerful reveal when we first saw it. And now that's not going to happen. And that is a huge loss for Marvel lore. Okay, again, Dave T. Geek says, please know the Young Avengers will be the final nail in the coffin of the MCU. Well, I think that final nail's already been hammered in. I don't know, everything's been basically a slow funeral since Endgame. But there's no way they don't do the Young Avengers. They've been setting it up all along. That's what the Disney Plus shows were about. That's what Multiverse of Madness was about. Establishing these next new young heroes to take over. So I really don't see any context. As long as Feige's in charge, I don't see any context in which they don't do the Young Avengers. I really don't. Dead Nerd, my question is, why would Sam want to sue someone he knows dearly like Bucky? I don't know. I don't know. It begs a lot of questions. Is it a question of royalties? Is it a question of merchandising? Aren't they a government-sponsored team? When the government owned the trademarks, who would own the trademarks? Are they Fontaine's personal trademarks? I mean, that whole conversation seems rather silly if you're a government-sponsored, now overt ops team. Then why would a private citizen or even another government agent own those trademarks? How is that even a conversation? I don't know. And I don't know what the relationship is with Sam and Bucky now. Okay, I hate the trend of making superheroes de facto celebrities. Only a few select characters should ever be celebrity heroes. I agree with that 100%. That was the strength of the original Fantastic Four. The strength of the original Fantastic Four was the idea that they didn't wear masks. That was going against the grain of the time, but we're going all the way back to the 1960s. Up until that point, I know Superman didn't wear a mask, but Superman had the dual identity. Up until that point, there was always the dual identity of the suit. That was a staple of comic book superheroes. And then when Stan Lee did the Fantastic Four, he said they weren't going to be masked. And then later on, it was retconned that Reed made a decision to make them be celebrities because he knew they'd be freaks if they weren't. So I always thought that was an incredible retcon to that choice, and it makes sense for the Fantastic Four. But with the advent of I Am Iron Man, now all of a sudden, superheroes are now celebrities. Okay? Because it's all a joke, yeah. When Yelena said, we have a problem in space, so I have a feeling Galactus found his way onto 1999 too. Possibly. We have to watch the Fantastic Four movie to see how it plays out. But since we know that the Four are coming, we know they're either fleeing their world because Galactus eats it, or they beat him back, but then they figure out that he's going to other worlds to consume those worlds since he can't have Reed's world, and Reed figures that's his fault, so that's why they come here. So, but we know how that movie ends with the Four fleeing their universe. We know that now. I thought the movie was okay. I liked it better than Captain Falcon, but it's still Iron Man 2 quality wise. Maybe. I don't really watch Iron Man 2 that much, so maybe, because I'm definitely not going to watch this again. And the thing about it is, I said it yesterday on my shorts, my film shorts that I put on YouTube. That came out funny. You know, the little film clips, the little shorts. I said it yesterday because I did one before the movie and after the movie. I really wanted to like this movie. I went into it wanting to like it because I really like Yelena. And I really wanted to like it. And I really thought if they were going to do something special with this movie, it could turn out to be really, really good. But that wasn't the case. If they really wanted to make it a stronger kind of pull for normies, a Bucky should have been the center. And it should have been all about his redemption arc, about finally becoming the hero in the eyes of the people if they're going to do them as the new Avengers. But it would have been better if they had stuck with the Suicide Squad theme, since that's what this was. It would have been better if Bucky had decided to go against Fontaine and take control of the team for himself and said they were going to right the wrongs in the world under his leadership. And he became kind of a quiet behind-the-scenes hero that would be attacking despots and dictators and freeing people and all that. And on the run from the government while doing good would have been a better play out for this group than making them the new Avengers. Galactus is not a villain. He's an impartial force of nature. He never seeks revenge. The Watcher says Galactus always keeps his word. Yeah, that's true. So a better term for Galactus would be antagonist. He's an antagonist. He stands against the protagonist, against the heroes, but he just hungry. He just eating. That's all. That's not the same as having evil motives. So that's true. I've long said that myself, that Galactus is not technically a villain, but his interests oppose those of the Four and those inhabitants of the earth and all of the worlds that he consumes. Okay? Okay? I don't get why Galactus would care about multiverse hopping. He would leave Earth alone and go to other places in his universe. Maybe. It depends on how the relationship between he and the Four play out. Because, like, if Reed actually uses what he does in the comics, if he finds the ultimate nullifier and threatens Galactus with ending all life in that universe, so he won't have anything to feast on, that might be a reason that Galactus comes to another universe if Reed actually uses the ultimate nullifier like he did in the comics. So we have to see how the Fantastic Four movie plays out in that regard. I just hate that we have to deal with the void again. Not that I hate the concept, is that I think this is the perfect movie to end it all. Could go that way for sure. I guess my whole thing is I just don't care about him as a character. But I never cared about him as a character in the comics. I thought he was OP and kind of silly and brutal, and I'm like, why? So, but I just didn't see the point. This movie was just pointless. It didn't have a point to me. It had themes, and it had a plot, a storyline, but it didn't really have a point, which is why you can take it out of the MCU canon and it doesn't matter. It doesn't really have a point. Okay? And so I don't know. If we have to deal with this again, The question is going to be, is it going to be like with the Hulk, where Bob makes friends with his dark side self, or Yelena has to talk him down like Natasha does a lullaby with Hulk? Is Yelena now Bob's lullaby? I don't know. But I don't care that much about him as a character. Sentry breaks everything that should have killed him in Thunderbolts, because now every second he doesn't immediately win will be silly. Now that's kind of true. As powerful as he is, with everything that he can do, and with the way he just cleaned house with the team, he defeated the team in less than 5 minutes. It was kind of a joke. So now that's kind of true. With his OP status, they probably should have killed him. And then we just don't have to deal with it anymore, because now it becomes an issue every time you bring him back up. The mental health allegory I actually related to, because I suffer from OCD all my life. Of course, it doesn't make the movie a masterpiece, but I appreciate it. So there you have. For some members of the audience, it was a point of connection. I wasn't saying that it was bad. I was saying it felt and still feels to me out of place in a superhero movie. It was the way that they did it. The way that they did it does not feel organic to the context. Not that doing it was wrong. The way they did it didn't feel integrated well into the other things that were going on. Like I said, for this particular group of characters, not heroes, it would have been better if Bucky had decided to make them a team, rebel against Fontaine, and Bucky had, after all his contacts all over the world as Winter Soldier, he knew where the bodies were buried. He knew the evil operations. He could have taken them to right wrongs, and Red Guardian would have loved that, under the radar. So while Fontaine is chasing them, he's chasing criminals that he used to be a part of. That would have been a much better conclusion to this group of people, as far as I'm concerned. Taskmaster's early death made me happy. Saw Black Widow. Yeah. It's safe to say that nobody liked gender swap Taskmaster. Nobody. It was just ridiculous. Nobody liked them making Taskmaster a woman. Nobody liked his daughter as a victim, and the Black Widows were all victims. They were trained assassins, but they were hypnotized, and it was just, there was nothing good about that iteration of Taskmaster. Like literally nothing. There's nothing good about it. So so Sentry should have gone in this movie, and they're saying that they were glad Taskmaster was gone. Maybe we'll meet the real Taskmaster later. Maybe it'll be a variant, because now it's going to be all these variants. If the leaks from Secret Wars and Doomsday are true, we're going to be meeting a whole lot of people, but I'm going to deal with that in a separate video. Okay. Do you think they might actually have Reed pull the trigger on the nullifier and destroy his own universe, forcing them and Galactus to flee to MCU? That would be hilarious. They might. Remember, this version of Reed is a loser. He's a loser. He's a weak, pathetic, simped out beta male that has to look to Sue for leadership. So I would not be surprised at all if he can't figure his way out of this one, and as a last resort does something stupid and then runs away, because that'll make him look even worse. Because that's what they're doing to Reed in this movie. Okay, so I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. But anyway, so thank you so much for your comments. Those are some great comments. And so, like I said, if you want to go see, all right, hold on, let me put this one up, because I like this one too. I feel like with the name of the movie, my theory is that the writers really wanted to be the reason for the team's name, but during the rewrites, they didn't want to piss off comic fans anymore. I don't agree with that, because they don't care what comic fans think. They have never cared what we thought. Are you kidding me? At what point do they care what longtime comic fans think? They've done everything possible to alienate us. I think they kept that name with the asterisk to do the switcheroo at the end and say, surprise, this is the new Avengers. So I think that was a way to set that twist up so we wouldn't really see it coming. I don't think it had anything to do with what we as fans wanted. Because again, since when? Since when did they care about that? Since when? So, no, I just didn't think so. But that's just me. Just my opinion. So like I said, in conclusion, because I'm about to sign off, go see this movie if you want to see it. From my point of view, it can be lifted out of the MCU canon and nothing changes. The big movies coming up are Fantastic Four, with the ending of which has already been spoiled, and Doomsday and Secret Wars. Those are going to be the game changers in what happens in the MCU afterwards. If the Thunderbolts are part of that, great. But really, how much of a difference would they make? Just Sentry can make a difference. Okay? So maybe they'll have Sentry against Silver Surfer. I don't know. That might be fun to watch. But again, I'm going to deal with that in another video because those movies are already too crowded. Okay. Cajun saying, so I should save my money. I mean, you can wait till it comes on Disney Plus or streaming, or you can wait because I'm sure it'll be there soon. You won't really miss much, is what I'm saying. You won't, because again, you can just lift this movie right out. Nothing of significance happens that changes the game except the second post-credit end scene where we see the Fantastic Four coming into this universe. That obviously is significant, but there's really nothing else that happens that's significant. If they were going to have Bob come on and just be one-dimensional, or just be a Jekyll and Hyde, or just be the new Hulk, they could have done that at any time. So anyway, so I appreciate all you guys' comments that are watching me live. I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much. For those of you that are watching this on the replay, leave me some comments below because I want to hear what you thought about the movie, what you think about my review of it. And I'm definitely going to deal with the Fantastic Four movie when that drops. But that, Fantastic Four and Superman aren't until July. So we got a while. But I definitely wanted to give my thoughts on this because and the other prediction that I made, remember I told you all my predictions about this movie came true? The other prediction that I made on Twitter was that this movie was going to be all or nothing. This movie was going to be love it or hate it. This movie was going to be extreme. People are either really going to get behind it or people are really going to despise it. And sure enough, that's what's happened. Wait, Dave's got another comment. Sentry should win if they make Doom powerful enough to stop Sentry, and who cares about what Captain Falcon and the Thunderbolts can do against him? That's what we've been saying all along. As soon as they made Sam Wilson Captain America, we're like, what's he going to do up against Red Hulk? What difference does that make? And as soon as they introduced Bob, and, I made that comment on Twitter that she, touted him as stronger than all the Avengers rolled into one, which isn't true. That's a ridiculous introduction to a character. But if so, that negates them. If this is what your super soldier experiments resulted in. So this is what happens. The MCU should have ended at the end of the Thanos saga. Should have ended with Endgame. Everything after that should have been Elseworlds or Multiverse or whatever, and they should reboot with the Fantastic Four. Okay? I've said that every video, but anyway. Okay, so that's it for me for now. Thank you again for watching me live. Leave some comments. Jump down in the comments below. Let me hear what you think about the movie, what you think about my commentary. Let me hear your perspective. And I will see you next week, next Friday, live, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time for my next weekly comics chat, because I'm on every week now, same time. Okay? Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.